My name is Daisy Marin, and I turned 32 last month. I'm the kind of person who double-checks the oven before leaving the house, who remembers birthdays no one else does. My mother used to call me the steady one. I thought she meant it kindly. That evening, the string lights in her backyard flickered like small stars, my graduation cake white frosting, blue lettering that said, "Congrats, Daisy," sat at the center of a folding table surrounded by paper plates and half-empty soda cans. I'd driven 7 hours from Seattle for this. I'd even worn the same navy dress I bought for my final presentation, hoping Mom would notice the color she once said made my eyes look calm. The air smelled of barbecue smoke and citronella candles. My brother Andrew was telling one of his loud stories near the grill, his son Liam perched beside him, kicking his legs under the chair. When Mom clapped her hands for everyone to gather, I felt something catch in my chest like a quiet pride that maybe, finally, they were proud too. "Speech," Andrew shouted. People laughed. I stood up, holding the plastic knife. "It's just a small party," I said, "but thank you for everything." That was when Liam hopped down from his chair. He ran toward the table, eyes bright, voice sharp. "Grandma says you only went back to school so you can brag." The words hit harder than they should have. Someone chuckled. Then he shoved the edge of the table with both hands. The cake slid, tilted, and fell, landing upside down on the patio. A gasp rippled through the guests, followed by laughter. My mother's was the loudest, high and effortless, as if the whole thing were harmless. Andrew grinned, pretending to scold his son. "You've got your aunt's sense of drama," he said. I just stood there, knife still in my hand. Frosting splattered my shoes. The smell of sugar mixed with charcoal smoke. The lights above buzzed faintly. My mother reached for a napkin, still smiling. "Oh, come on, Daisy. Don't be so serious, it's just a cake." Maybe it was, but something inside me tilted with it. Something that had been standing too straight for too long. I set the knife down, wiped my palms on my dress, and looked toward the gate that led to the street. The laughter kept rising behind me, chasing me into the dark Idaho air as I walked away from the only home I'd ever tried to belong to. The night air smelled like rain and dust when I reached my car. My hands were still sticky with frosting, the sweetness clinging to my skin like something I couldn't wash off. I sat behind the wheel for a long minute, headlights cutting across the empty gravel drive. Behind me, the laughter had already returned to its usual rhythm, warm, careless, and whole without me. I started the engine and drove. The 2-lane road out of Boise stretched ahead, dark except for the occasional porch light or a truck passing in the opposite lane. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, the group chat lighting up again and again. I didn't look. I just kept driving until the highway opened and the rain began. Soft at first, then heavy enough to blur the yellow lines. Somewhere near Mountain Home. I pulled into a gas station for coffee. The attendant barely looked up when I handed over a $5. He said, "Rough night," and I almost laughed. I wanted to tell him about the cake, about the way my mother's voice still rang in my ears, but all that came out was something like that. When I got back in the car, my phone screen glowed in the dark. A new message sat at the top, Mom's name. Her photo from years ago when she still wore red lipstick and called me my good girl. I opened it. "We've chosen to sever all contact. Stay away forever." The rain hit harder against the windshield. Steady. Relentless. I stared at the words until they blurred. For a second, I thought I might cry. But the tears never came. I just put the phone face down, shifted into drive, and watched the lights of the gas station shrink in the mirror until they disappeared completely. By the time I reached Seattle, dawn had begun to smear a faint gray across the sky. The city looked washed clean, half asleep under the drizzle. I parked outside my apartment complex, the kind of place where walls are thin and neighbors barely nod in the hallway. Inside, everything smelled faintly of coffee grounds and paper safe, familiar and empty. I dropped my overnight bag by the door and sat at the small kitchen table. still wearing yesterday's dress. The silence felt heavy enough to touch. On the counter, a stack of unopened envelopes weighted bank statements, credit alerts, automatic payment confirmations. I pulled one open, then another. The numbers blurred together until a pattern began to appear, something that made my stomach tighten. Mortgage payment $400 withdrawn monthly. Auto loan $640 withdrawn monthly. Both tied to my account, both signed by me. I traced my own signature at the bottom of a scanned document, remembering the day I'd signed it. Mom had said, "You're the responsible one. Daisy. Just until your brother gets back on his feet." Andrew had grinned, easy as always, promising to pay it back before the year ended. That was 3 years ago. My coffee went cold beside me as I scrolled through old messages, thank yous, apologies that never meant change, reminders sent in gentle tones that sounded like affection. Each one felt like a small knot tightening around me. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the rain sliding down the window. The truth sat there in the room, with me. Quiet, but undeniable. I hadn't been helping them because they needed me. I'd been helping them because I was too afraid not to. Every dollar had been a way to buy peace, to keep my mother's voice soft, to keep Andrew's temper contained. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. My hands were trembling, not from anger, but from something smaller clarity, maybe the kind that stings before it soothes. I gathered the envelopes into a neat stack and placed them in the center of the table. Then I took a deep breath and whispered, almost to myself, "No more." Morning settled slowly over the apartment, pale light slipping through the blinds and falling across the table where the envelopes still sat. I hadn't slept. My mind kept circling the same truth until it stopped hurting and started feeling like direction. I brewed a new pot of coffee, stronger than usual, and sat down with my laptop. The blue glow of the screen made the room look colder. My email inbox was a row of payment receipts, bank alerts, reminders from companies I didn't even use. Every line of text looked like a fingerprint of the life I had built around other people's needs. I opened the family group chat out of habit. The last message was from Mom, sent 2 days ago. A photo of Liam holding the flattened remains of the cake. The caption read, "He says he's sorry, but look how cute he is." There were heart emojis from everyone except me. I stared at it for a long moment, feeling something shift behind my ribs. Then I closed the chat, opened a new message window, and began to type. The words came easily, clean and final. Removing my name from every loan tomorrow. No explanation, no apology. I reread it twice, my finger hovering over send. The air felt very still, as if the city itself had paused to listen. When I finally tapped the button, the tiny whoosh of delivery sounded louder than it should have. I sat back, watching the message disappear into the thread. For the first time in years, my chest felt strangely light, not relief exactly, but something close. I finished the last sip of coffee, cold and bitter, and whispered into the quiet room, "That's enough." That night, the rain returned, soft against the windows at first, then heavier until the whole city seemed to breathe with it. I sat on the couch with the lights off, the laptop closed, the message still echoing in my head. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional hiss of passing tires on wet asphalt. The first buzz came at 10:17 p.m., a notification from the family chat. Then another. And another? I tried to ignore them, but the phone kept lighting up on the coffee table, pulsing in the dark like a heartbeat. When I finally turned it over, the screen filled with words. Mom. What is this supposed to mean? Andrew. Are you serious right now? Mom again. You're being dramatic. We'll talk tomorrow. Then, 5 minutes later, all caps from Andrew. You think you can just walk away? I put the phone face down again. My stomach felt hollow, not from fear, but from recognition. This was exactly how they had always spoken anger first, then guilt, then silence. I made myself breathe slowly, counting each inhale until the next vibration came. By 11, there were missed calls. By 11:30, the chat had turned frantic. Dad's name appeared next, the first time in months. Call your mother. She's crying. Mom again. I didn't raise you to be cruel. Andrew, you owe us this. You always have. The phone buzzed until the table rattled. I thought about unplugging it, but the sound, sharp and rhythmic, became almost hypnotic. I poured a glass of water, stood by the window, and watched the rain smear the lights of downtown Seattle into long silver streaks. It was strange, realizing how much noise love could make when it panicked. Every message was a small demand disguised as concern. Every call a reminder that peace was never free. I left the phone where it was and let the rain drown out the rest. When the clock on the oven hit midnight, I finally picked it up. The screen glowed so bright it hurt my eyes. Messages 147, missed calls 38. I scrolled through the words, each one shouting louder than the last, pleading, accusing, bargaining. Not one said I'm sorry. Not one asked if I was okay. I set the phone down gently, as if it might still explode. The rain had eased, turning into a low, steady rhythm against the glass. Somewhere in the building, a neighbor's TV played faintly through the wall, a late-night comedy laugh track bleeding into the quiet. By midnight, there were hundreds of messages and missed calls, but not one was an apology. Morning came gray and thin, the kind of Seattle morning that looked colorless even after the sun had risen. I hadn't slept. My phone still lay face down on the table, silent now, as if it had exhausted itself in the night. The air inside the apartment felt different, lighter, maybe, or simply emptied out. I dressed in the same clothes I'd worn the day before, tied my hair back, and left without breakfast. The walk to the bank was short, the streets slick with rain and scattered with fallen leaves. When I reached the glass doors of Green First Bank, my reflection stared back at me. Tired eyes, but steady. A man at the reception desk directed me to a consultation office. "Mr. Diaz will help you," he said. The room was quiet, painted in soft blue, a single fern in the corner. Mr. Diaz was in his 50s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a voice that carried the kind of calm people trust. He gestured toward a chair. "I reviewed the documents you sent," he began. "I think I understand what's happening." I nodded. 2 loans. My parents' house and my brother's SUV, both with my name attached. I just want to remove myself from them completely. He listened without interrupting, his pen motionless over a notepad. "You're not the first person to be taken advantage of under the word family," he said quietly. "If you can show that you have no ownership or benefit from the property, we can start the release process today." I handed him the folder I'd spent half the night assembling: lease agreement, pay stubs, emails, even an old message from Mom that said, "The house is ours. You just helped sign." Mr. Diaz read through everything, then looked up. "This is more than enough." He clicked his pen and called someone in legal. His tone shifted to efficiency. "Let's begin co-borrower removal for Daisy Marin. Effective immediately." The sound of the pen clicking echoed softly. My hands trembled as I signed the final page. Each signature felt like untying another invisible knot. When he stamped the last document, he smiled. "You did the right thing, Ms. Marin. Sometimes protecting yourself is the only way to teach others to respect you." Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled sharp, clean, almost new. I walked slowly toward the corner cafe, breathing in the silence that followed me like something I had finally earned. 3 days passed before the knock came. It was sharp, impatient, the kind that made the thin walls of the apartment tremble. I froze halfway through rinsing a cup, the sound of running water muffling for a moment before my pulse caught up. It was 8:42 in the evening, the city already wrapped in a film of mist and faint neon. Another knock, harder this time. Then a voice I hadn't heard since the night of the party. "Daisy. "Open this door right now," my mother called. "We need to talk," through the peephole. Her figure wavered under the hallway light, arms folded, jaw tight. Beside her stood Andrew, phone in hand, his face red, his breath fogging the glass. I didn't open the door. Mom tried again, her tone brittle. "The bank froze our accounts. Your father's credit is ruined." "What did you do?" I pressed my forehead against the cool wood and answered softly, "I fixed what you broke." Andrew stepped closer, his voice low but trembling. "You think this is funny? You humiliated us. You destroyed everything." I turned the deadbolt without unlocking it. I just stopped paying for people who never asked if I could afford to. Their words tangled through the door accusations, guilt, disbelief. For a moment, I felt 12 again, standing in the hallway of our old house, listening to the same voices argue about money I didn't understand back then. I reached for my phone and opened the emergency call screen. My thumb hovered steady. "Seattle Police Department," I said clearly into the 911 app. "Two individuals are outside my apartment refusing to leave." The dispatcher's voice was calm. "Do you know them?" "Yes," I said, still watching their blurred shapes through the peephole. "They're my family." 10 minutes later, red and blue lights painted the walls. I stayed quiet as the officers approached the hallway. One man and one woman, both professional, both gentle in their movements. My mother's voice rose first, shrill and panicked. "She's my daughter. She destroyed our finances. We just need to talk." The male officer shook his head. "Ma'am, this is private property. If she's asked you to leave, you need to step away." Andrew tried to speak over him, voice cracking. "You don't understand. She's ruined our lives, sir," the female officer said firmly. "That's not a reason to trespass." There was a pause, the kind that swallows sound. My mother's eyes flicked toward the camera above my door. For a second, I saw the exhaustion there, the cracks beneath her fury, but then she turned away. Their footsteps faded down the stairwell, the police escorting them into the night. When the last echo disappeared, I leaned against the wall, my knees shaking. The phone still recorded, a faint red dot blinking on the screen. The air inside felt lighter, almost hollow. I slid down to the floor and listened to the hum of the city outside, distant traffic, a siren far away, the steady breath of freedom pressing through the cracks of the door. The morning after the police came, I woke to a different kind of noise. My phone buzzed, not with calls this time, but with notifications tags, messages, screenshots. Someone had sent me a link to my mother's Facebook post. Her words were written in capital letters, the kind she used when she wanted the world to see her pain. "Sometimes the child you trust most betrays you the worst. Daisy stole from her parents and ruined our credit. Some people never learn gratitude." Below it were dozens of comments from old neighbors, relatives, and people I barely remembered. Poor Linda. How could a daughter do that, ungrateful generation? For a moment, I just stared at it. The kitchen light flickered, humming faintly. I didn't cry or defend myself. The truth felt too solid now to need witnesses. I opened my work email instead. My cursor blinked in an empty message box. The words came easily. Subject clarification, personal matter. "Hi team. If you see rumors about me online, please ignore them. Some people fight boundaries with lies. I'm fine and appreciate your professionalism and privacy. Daisy." I read it once, then hit send. My reflection in the laptop screen looked calm, almost detached. The world outside my window kept moving, cars passing, sunlight hitting the wet street, someone laughing on the sidewalk. An hour later, I checked my mother's post again. The comments had multiplied, but I didn't scroll. Let them talk. The story had already left my hands, and for once, I didn't feel the need to chase it. I closed the laptop, exhaled, and let the hum of the city fill the space where their voices used to be. It sounded almost like quiet. 3 days later, an envelope waited on the floor just inside my door. The green First Bank seal was embossed in gold at the corner. My name was printed neatly across the front, Miss Daisy Marin. I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of it in my hands before tearing the flap open. Inside was a single letter. The language was formal, clean, almost cold. This document confirms that Daisy Marin has been fully released from all co-signed financial obligations pertaining to the mortgage of Linda and Robert Marin and the vehicle loan under Andrew Marin. The paper trembled slightly as I held it. I traced the raised seal at the bottom, the faint shimmer of ink where Mr. Diaz had signed his name. The words blurred for a second, and I realized I was holding my breath. I set the letter on the table and poured a cup of coffee. The steam curled in the air, soft and slow. Outside, sunlight cut through the last of the morning fog, streaking across the apartment floor. For the first time in weeks, the air didn't feel heavy. I walked to the window, holding the cup between both hands. The city stretched below buses rumbling, people moving with their own errands, their own lives untouched by mine. The world had kept going, and somehow I had too. Later that afternoon, I checked my phone out of habit. My mother's post had disappeared. No explanation, no apology, just gone. Maybe someone told her the truth. Maybe the bank called to confirm it. I didn't need to know. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into a folder marked Personal Documents. It wasn't triumph that I felt, or even relief, but something quieter space, the kind that comes after a long-held breath finally released. When I sat down again, the cup was empty, the room still. The paper on the table caught the light and glowed faintly, like proof that freedom doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes, it just waits for you to notice it. A year later, the city smelled like spring again, wet pavement, tulips from the corner market, coffee drifting through open windows. My life had settled into a quiet rhythm I hadn't known I could build. I worked, I cooked, I read in the evenings. The small things had started to feel like enough. That morning, sunlight spilled across the kitchen counter where the same folder from last year still sat, a little worn at the edges. My phone buzzed beside it. The name on the screen made me pause. Andrew. The message was short. I'm sorry for everything. No explanations. No excuses. Just 6 words. I read them once, then again, waiting for something to stir anger, sadness, relief. But there was only stillness, the kind that doesn't ask for closure because it already exists. I placed the phone face down and leaned against the counter. Outside, gulls circled over Lake Union, their reflections flashing in the water. The breeze slipped through the open window, carrying the faint sound of a boat horn and someone's laughter from the docks below. For a long moment, I stood there, breathing in the air that smelled like rain and beginnings. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about letting anyone back in. It was about letting myself stop carrying what they left behind. I made a fresh pot of coffee, poured it into a chipped mug, and watched the steam rise. Across the lake, sunlight broke through the clouds, thin and golden. When I finally sat by the window, the city looked both familiar and new. I lifted the mug to my lips and whispered softly, almost to no one, "Welcome home, Daisy."